Liz Scully, also known as the Evil Coach, she's one of our members. She's been a member for a few months now. I met her at a fabulous workshop that we both did about storytelling, and she tells me she has a great story to share today as well. So I'm just going to hand straight over to Liz. Let's enjoy.
Always helps if you unmute. Hello, chaps. Nice to be here. I'm Liz. Thank you very much. I'm a business strategist and a mastermind evangelist. So I'll try and tone it down a bit and tell you a bit more about me. So first of all, most important, I sound English. I'm actually Irish. So please don't get that wrong. I realise it doesn't matter to anyone but me, but I grew up in Pakistan and in Nigeria. And this is what happens to an Irish accent under those circumstances. Very confusing. So my background is in film. I spent 20 years working on big Hollywood films, doing big Hollywood visual effects. And you've probably seen the films, and they date badly. Visual effects do not age well, I have to say. And hundreds of millions of people have seen my work. And they probably didn't like the films they were in because they weren't in the sort of films that people, the sort of film, the big blockbusters that you go to and go, wasn't very good, but it looked pretty. That's what I did for most of my adult life. Absolutely delightful, silly, long hours. It taught me a huge amount around managing big teams, dealing with big egos, how the best work is achieved in small groups, that we are better together, all of those lovely things. It also taught me how to work with film directors, which I have to say is a talent in itself. But when I left the film industry, and I left because I heard of these things called weekends, and frankly, I wanted one. And in the film industry, the only way you can get a weekend is to leave the industry, which sucks, I have to say. So I did move on. And for me, there is a direct correlation between a director and their big goal and their desire for amazing things and a requirement to stick to a budget that directly correlates with the way we as entrepreneurs think. We dream big, we want lots of things, maybe we have a much smaller budget than that. So I found the transition really easy from film. And there's so much that film has taught me. There's a lot of things that are really helpful for us. And when I work with my strategy clients, I know that I'm thinking of a lot of film stuff. And part of that is that we really stack the work so that every single thing we do is as effective as possible. When you go to a location, you shoot as many of the shots as you possibly can there. You cover as much coverage to make sure that when you get to the edit sequences, everything fits together. You have all of your bases covered. So while you're very efficient, you're also very careful. And all of this means that creating the strategy I do with my clients, I'm thinking about how can we make each step work as effectively as possible. And if that sounds quite sensible and boring, I should point out that the strategy side of my business is called Evil Coach and is basically just an excuse for smutty jokes about strategy, which is quite a niche area, but it means that we spend a lot of time giggling, which, as you can tell, is quite important to me. And the other part of my business is Masterminds, because the other thing I learned in film is that it is so important to work together in groups. In film, you have a lot of big personalities, and together in small groups, we produce so much better than we would on our own. And that's what happens in a mastermind group. And just as in this delightful group, it is important to have somewhere where you can think and where you can really consider that side of things. So film has taught me an awful lot, and being a bit of a film nerd, it has filled me full of a delightful history on a set of imagery. In fact, I used to teach cinematography at DreamWorks while I was working there, which was very nice. There were only a couple of us that teach cinematography there. There was me with my Teach Yourself film book, and there was a cinematographer who has been nominated for an Oscar 13 times. So, quite impressive. not so much me. But my work has been Oscar nominated, not my cinematography work, my visual effects work, and the same, I've actually won an Emmy. So it all went very well in film. But eventually I wanted those weekends, so I moved on to the next phase of my life. And I've taken so much from film, and a big part of it is how important that collaboration is, but also how important story is. And story will change so much. And I'd like to give you a tiny little example of that. So, excuse me. So I can tell you that my friend Tim loves his wife. Not a very interesting fact, and not a very memorable fact. But I can make it more memorable by, if you'll indulge me, spending a couple of minutes telling you a tiny story about it. So I was at Tim's wedding. There was about 100 of us. We're all dressed up. We've got the champagne. We're at the speech part. And his wife gave a speech. Delightful, very funny, very moving, even better, very short. All the things we love in a speech. And then Tim stood up and said, I'm not going to do a speech. Little ripple of appreciation in the room. I'm not going to do a speech. I'm going to sing instead. Terrifying to those of us who know him well, because Tim is known for not being able to sing. I mean, truly cannot carry a note in a bucket, like absolutely useless. In fact, so bad a singer is he that on at least 2 shows that I know he's worked on, he's been asked to never sing, not even a little bit. He has had management intervention to stop his singing. So here he is at the wedding, threatening to sing. Terror spreads amongst his good friends. Oh no, this is going to be bad. And he said, no, I just really want to show my wife how much I love her. Somebody whispers to me, maybe he's had lessons. No, he had not had lessons, because he began to sing, You to Me Are Everything. And it is the worst singing I have ever heard. He didn't hit any of the notes. And because he was nervous, because it was his wedding, he was creaky, he was awful. And here's the thing, it was actually really moving, because there he was making a complete fool of himself in front of 100 of his closest friends and family, purely to show that he genuinely loved his wife and would do anything to prove that to her. There was, as mentioned, there was barely a dry eye in the house. And again, I reiterate, not because his singing was so bad, although it was actually bad enough to make that happen. And that little tiny story, hopefully you'll remember it. Hopefully next time you sing, little moment will think, is this appropriate? But here's the thing, in mastermind groups, which is what I run myself and what I train people to run, if you create a safe space, and Tim turned up and told that story about how he can't sing and he'd made a terrible show of himself at his wedding to do it to prove something. If at that mastermind, he told people that he wanted to sing and he was going to take lessons, how effective would it be? It would really, the whole group would be behind him. And I know this story is effective because I once told it at a talk I gave in Colombia. And there was, I don't know, a couple of 100 people in the audience, and I was lightly mobbed afterwards by people saying, what a great story, it was delightful, but also people saying, I want to love like Tim's, wouldn't that be great? And I'm like, okay, we have other issues in the room, but that's interesting. So, and that's not even my story. So if we take a goal and we make a safe space and we wrap the whole thing in a story, you're going to achieve so much more. You're going to recruit people to be on side with you. And the film industry is a mechanism to tell stories. It's a machine to tell stories. And that is what I spent most of my life looking at. Strategies to tell stories effectively in an effective way. I'm not a story coach. I'm a strategist, because when we have the right story behind us, we can make it as efficient and beautiful as possible. So if you are a CoGlow member, you will find a little tiny mastermind course in the portal. And I think I'm also doing a Q&A there as well. It's going to be lovely. So if you want more mastermindy stuff, check that. If you want more story stuff, then just private message me. I have a lot of these. And that's really what I have for you. I want to inspire you to take a big goal and think about a story that fits, that will inspire people around it. And here's a little clue how to do that. You don't actually need new stories. You just need ways to lightly change the story so it fits the goal that you want. We can use the same stories over and over. It's just different ways of presenting them. And stories will drive your strategy and help people become more sort of fall in love with you and your goals and exactly what is happening. That's what I have for you, chaps. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Fascinating. I just love this story idea so much so that we met at a workshop around story, and the guys that run the workshop are going to be coming to support our members, Collaboration Global members, on Monday at the members meeting. So that will be interesting to unpick that as well. Hadn't seen it in quite the same light around strategy. You sent me a little message to say that if Francois hadn't turned up, that you might be able to offer us something for our breakout rooms. So I would love you to be able to do that, Liz, if that was something. Yeah, go for it.
Now, excellent. So, as mentioned, I have two sides to my business. Rethink is mastermind stuff. Evil Coach is the strategy side. The reason I giggle every time is it's strategy seen through the lens of the kink community. It is the weirdest business you have ever heard of, and it is utterly delightful. And one of the ways I think it works really well is that it helps people think about strategy in a much more loose, delightful way. Because I've found that when I'm teaching strategy, people tend to sort of stiffen up in a slightly scary, oh, strategy is a big thing. No, it can be fun and ridiculous. So we do a kind of strategy improv when I'm teaching it. Let me give you some examples. So we take a ridiculous goal, like a truly stupid goal, like how would I get a giraffe to the moon? Or how would I play Tiddlywinks with Arnold Schwarzenegger? He looks like he might have quite a powerful wrist. I reckon he'd be an evil Tiddlywinks player. Or my very first one was, how would I get an elephant to play a concerto? And in my mind, what I was imagining was a sort of Disney kind of elephant in a long tail suit at a grand piano, completely ridiculous. Like, how would I do that? And then we apply very, very sensible strategy. Like, so if we have this ridiculous goal, how are we going to achieve it? So with my elephant, I thought, like I said, first thought was Disney. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You'll never get an elephant in a tail suit for a start. But if we actually get down to the goal, what is it? It is to get an elephant to trigger a concerto somehow. Obviously, they haven't got little hands. That's not going to happen. Could they play with their trunk? So eventually I got it to a point that, well, there are elephants. There are pressure mats. So I can get an elephant to walk across a mat, hook that up to some kind of computer, and each step could trigger a section of the concerto. So then all I need is to source an elephant and some kind of sparkly outfit. Admittedly, that's optional, but, you know, if you're going to do it big. So let me give you one or two other examples, and then we'll go to breakout rooms, choose a ridiculous goal, and we'll move forward. So one of my clients, her goal was to be an Olympic runner. Fair enough. Do you run now? No. Interesting. So what is the goal to get to be an Olympic runner? She said, okay, so step one, move to Vanuatu. Interesting. I'm going to need a bit more information here. She said, well, Vanuatu doesn't have a running team. So once I live there and have been naturalized, surely I just need to pay to form the Olympic team. I can be the only runner there. I don't need to be anything other, right? If I'm willing to sponsor myself, good to go. So step one, move to Vanuatu. Step two, naturalize. Step three, form running team of self. Step four, buy running book. I think that might actually work, to be honest. She doesn't have to be any good. She just needs to be in a place where it's easy. So that impressed me. Same session. Indulge me on this one because I do find this very amusing. Her goal was to make a fish climb a tree. I'm like, oh, this is good. Tell me how this is going to work. She said, well, obviously, Swiss woman, very, very specific. So obviously, Liz, this is a 2-year project. Obviously, My mistake, of course it is. How does it work? So we all know salmon return to where they spawn. Okay. So step one, spawn salmon at the top of a tree. Okay. Build some kind of chute so they can come down and wait 1 year. I like these steps. They're nice and clear. We've spawned, they have escaped, we have come back a year later. So then all you need is a series of tanks set a kind of fish leap distance up that we've seen them on the David Attenborough shows. We know salmon can leap, so we just build a bunch of tanks around the tree so they can get to the top where they spawned. Again, it might just work. So your mission, should you wish to be ludicrous, is step one, choose a stupid goal, something foolish, and then work with the people in your breakout group to work some sensible ways to do this. Remember, we have a Vanuatu Olympic specialist, we have a fish up a tree, and we have an elephant playing a concerto. You could do this, people. It's going to be fabulous. That's what I've got. Is everyone ready? Does this sound like something you want to play with?
Just to give people, yeah, absolutely. Just to give people an idea, we're going to give you 20 minutes. So there should be 3, maybe 4 people in the room. So make sure everybody gets a chance to share their ridiculous goal that they'd like to achieve, and then start brainstorming, put some sensible strategies around it. And ultimately, I'd like, if there is time at the end, for each person to kind of go, and this is a goal I have in my business that isn't a ridiculous goal. Where could we possibly go with that? And just see if that kind of translates, which is, guess, where you're going with this, Liz. I think it's brilliant. What fun. And ironically, today I have chosen for the collaborative mindset a sense of fun. Who knew that it's just gonna, yeah, absolutely perfect. So Louise, have we got the group sorted? We do.